Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So for roll call, we have present Harriet Applegate, Graham Ball, Jonathan Cecila, Drew Herzig, Greg Kluge, Guy Thielen, and Linda Strievsky. We don't have with us tonight Roland and Stephanie. They're both sick. But we have a quorum. Approval of prior minutes. We have to postpone this because Lee has also been sick, and he wasn't able to get the minutes done. So we'll defer that to our next meeting. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. There's nobody here from the public to comment. So we'll go into old business. Guy, do you want to talk to us about your naming protocols for the Dropbox?
Yes, I can just mention, so I passed out a page to everybody, and it really becomes not file naming. The issue is not file naming, it's how to organize the materials. And
Could you speak into the mic more?
I'm going to learn to do this better.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I passed out a page, and the issue is how to organize the information, and I believe what Lee's organized already is a set of folders and that kind of thing, and it looks really good to me. And I did talk to Roland, but this is already in place. So we have the existing folders that are listed here. I'm suggesting that for our purposes, we would want to have some additional folders that help us keep things organized. We don't have any folder yet for something that we create and we consider final, like, for example, the survey form that you produced, Linda. It should go somewhere where we can find it pretty easily. Other supported materials is something like Jonathan's work in terms of our surveys about what we're interested in, all the rest of it. It should go, again, I think it's pretty easy. But, then there's a folder which I'm afraid to call it archive because archive has different meanings to different people in different locations, but it's no longer current materials. Basically, we shouldn't be referring to it, but we may want to go back to it sometime, so let's not destroy it. I mean, these are all suggestions. And then finally, a working folder where I think it makes sense when we're working on a document that we don't try to file it somewhere as though it's a finished document, and instead we have a working folder. And we can always go there to see what we're doing, who's done whatever updates and all the rest of it until it's final. And then we create a final version, put it in the CRC final area, and then move everything else, either get rid of it or put it into no longer current. So I just think we can enhance that. And of course, as Roland mentioned, I mean, this is just, it's a working model, really. If we need something more, we change it. In looking at I did download the Dropbox app to my computer device, and because it was a little bit easier to manage the files or look at the files and all. But in any case, everything only has a really small number of characters that are presented for each file, which sometimes it just hides what the file is. Mm-hmm. So my suggestion is that as we create files, we take those initial characters and we do whatever makes it unique and critical and all the rest of it. We try to specify it there so it's easy to find. So
Can we adjust that, or are we stuck with that? The limited number of characters to name a file?
Sorry, may I clarify? So the file, I think, we can name a file 256 characters. But when it shows up, when we're presented that file name in Dropbox app or in a file browser, I use Apple, so, Apple file browser, it's going to give us a certain number of characters, then it's going to give us an ellipse, and then it's going to give us a few more characters. So no matter how long it is, it's going to hide a lot. If it's too long, it's going to hide a lot of the characters. So that's why I'm saying if we have a file name, let's do something unique and critical, make it really, initially so people can actually see it. If we put CRC 2023 in front of every file, it's not going to help us discriminate among the files. So that's what I'm suggesting.
Okay. Is there a way to adjust that? Or are we stuck with that?
That's not something I know how to fix.
We're probably stuck with it because it probably belongs to Dropbox.
Okay.
And I mean, we can make the column a little bit bigger maybe or something, but it depends what device you ask. Like, it's gonna be a crapshoot.
No, I'm sorry, mind you, in Dropbox app, there's a plus sign, and if you hit the plus sign next to a file name, it gives you the full file name, no matter how large it is.
Okay.
It's just that, in terms of quick access and easy access, you just try to do things easily.
And I came up with something similar when I was doing my own files, where I had a bunch listed minutes or CRC, and I was like, I don't know what minutes they are. Like, it's easy to get lost in it. For stuff that's date-oriented, I've learned I really like a year, month, day. And the only reason for that, if it's date-sensitive, is because then it auto-sorts. So it'll always be in order, because sometimes if you do month, day, year, January will come before December, even though it was a year ago. So there's stuff we can do simply, but it doesn't address, I don't know what other identifiers we could do if it's just date minutes, or something.
I don't know how easy it is to, Lee would know here, but we individuals don't have the rights to rename a file that's up on Dropbox. It must be the administrator or whoever. So to some degree, to some degree, to keep things simple, I mean, if there's 25 files out there with a certain convention in terms of date, I do recognize, Jonathan, it'd be nice to have it sorted automatically, but to have somebody go out and change 25 file names, maybe it's not the right way.
Probably give editing access to at least you and Roland or everybody on the commission if you decide you want it, but just so you can rename files and reorganize at least.
Yeah, if you do that, Lee, if you were talking to me, I don't know that, but
Yes.
including me in that, yeah. If you give me that ability to do that, I can kind of try to rationalize it.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be good to have a dating protocol so that we could find stuff more easily. But thank you for thinking that through.
My pleasure.
Anybody have any questions for Guy?
About the no longer current materials, why don't we just call that inactive? Because they're not necessarily obsolete and it's not an archive yet, so they're just inactive files if you're looking for a title.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Yep, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Drew.
Also, I'm sorry to be so clueless, but there's a link to this on the city's web page of the CRC.
No, right now this is just shared with members, which, if somebody from the public asks for access to it, they're all public records, so we would provide them, but I only sent this link to members.
Okay, so if I go back into the emails, I'll find that link.
Yes, and I can send it again if,
Yeah, please, yes. Thank you.
But some of these things are on the web page, aren't they?
um,
The archive from the prior commission is,
yes, and resolutions for
And
this
meeting
CRC
minutes.
are on there. Meeting minutes and agendas are on there too. So some of them, yes.
I would like to put forward, I think that we should probably all have editing access to the Dropbox because, as it stands, I can't upload any documents to it. I think that could be important at some point for any of us to upload documents, so.
If we send them to Lee, can Lee upload them?
Yes, I can do that. Yeah.
Would that be preferred for
Would that be
folks?
an-
or-
Okay?
I would prefer to upload my own, but that's just because, just the emails we've had and the different files coming across it, it's so easy to get lost and buried. Whereas if I put it up there, at least there's a copy somewhere and it's much easier than sorting through a bunch of emails. And I'm sure Lee can do it, but I could just see that going sideways quickly. Through no fault, just the volume or adjustments or edits, that fun stuff. So, because if you put it up, Dropbox, I believe, has a recently deleted. So if things get removed or whatever, it'll hold on to it for a little bit. So then we also get that ability where to worry about things just being deleted right away or losing it.
So how do we change the settings then so that members can upload?
That I can do easily. I just want to make sure everybody's, I don't want to have people in the documents working on them, I guess, and sharing them around. That could present an open meetings problem if you just kind of have a joint working document. But if you're
We
just,
don't have any joint working documents
Right.
at the moment, so.
right, but if you're just uploading documents to it to later discuss at meetings, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
Are we sort of all clear at where we are with this now?
I think so. Does anybody have any other questions?
I think my only question would be, what's next after this? Because if I heard Guy right, he made the point, and he and Roland, we're learning, and so it's going to be adjusting, so we just kind of go forward with this, and
No, I think that what I've stated at this point in time, I think is something we should go with.
Yeah.
We also just want to recognize that we may learn along the way that we want to do something a little different or add something, and that's fine. We're just saying it's not cast in stone, and let's make it as good as we can, make it as easy to use and convenient and all the rest of it. I just want to say one word if I can. I know for me, I can't deal with all the different emails and all the different documents, and, I just lose track of everything. And I don't know what the latest thing is, and I don't know what I should be looking at, so if I can go someplace like this, it's going to help me a lot in terms of the work.
Anybody have any other comments on this? Okay. Does anybody have any new personal email addresses you're using or contemplating, just so we be on the lookout for that?
I don't know if everybody knows that I created one with the .crc right in my at Yahoo, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. The next item is updated information about our meetings and input from elected officials. So the good news is that we've gotten responses to the doodle poll from 5 people, and it's clear that we have, among those 5 people, we have slots that they can make on either January 8th or January 9th. So I guess one question is whether you would prefer to have, one day where we do a whole bunch, or do you want to have 2 days and kind of split them up? So it's not as big a burden at one time.
Linda, did you send this information around before this meeting?
No,
Okay.
these are doodle poll results that have kind of been dribbling in.
Okay.
So on January 8th, we have city council members who could be available 6:30, 7:30. And then on the 9th, similarly, 6:30, 7:30. So, we can slice and dice that among those 5 people. It's just a question of whether you would prefer to do, with that many people, we've got to do it 2 days anyway. Melody Hart initially responded that she wasn't available for meetings until the 18th, but I think she responded a week or so ago, and her mom has since passed away. So I believe she had expected to be away for a couple of weeks, and now she's back in town. So it's possible that she will be able to meet on the 8th or the 9th as well. I did send her a text message to ask her if she could go back into the doodle and add some additional slots.
Are those dates that only I can't make, the 8th and the 9th?
I thought you were going to participate by Zoom, no?
Oh, I guess I could. Yeah, I can.
And this is next Monday and Tuesday, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I'll do Zoom.
And a quick question, do we have to have a quorum for these? Is it considered a meeting then? Or, do we need a quorum?
Turn my mic off. Yes, I think so. If there's going to be any discussion with the interviewee, then you'll need a quorum, and we'll have to give notice of the meeting.
And also, we do have 2 surveys back. Gail Larson and Tony Kuda have both returned their surveys, and I reminded people today, asking them to please return the surveys. So Guy, I think you volunteered to help organize those results, so I'll forward those on to you. I can forward them to everybody, because some of you may want to read, all of them yourself anyway. But I only have 2 so far.
I don't
I think we
mind
would
if-
want to give priority to scheduling interviews with people who have provided the survey responses.
I don't mind getting the returns as they dribble in because it's easier to kind of work through them bit by bit than on this kind of stuff. I guess one of the questions is, are we going to have much discussion? Do we need a quorum? Because basically, I think other than the questions and answers, there's not going to be a whole lot of, if we dismiss them, then we can just say, we're not going to discuss this because we don't have a quorum present. I guess we can decide how we want to conduct these meetings, and then we'll know whether commission members can attend by Zoom or not.
Well, I would think that by definition, there will be discussion because I'm hoping that we'll have some interaction with the city council members. It's not going to be like the routine at city council meetings where people from the public come and talk and nobody responds except to say, thank you for coming. I'm hoping we'll have some dialogue. And that's the purpose of actually getting together with them, and that we would have had their survey information ahead of time so that we could perhaps even, we could meet 10 or 15 minutes before we're scheduled to start with one of the city council members and have a little discussion about what we want to prioritize to use our time well. The slots have been set up for a half hour each, and there's nothing magic about that. So we may want to have a buffer between slots so that if we were having a good discussion with somebody, we don't necessarily want to cut it off. Maybe we want to keep going for a while. And then also have a few minutes for us to, kind of take a break and clear our heads before the second person comes in.
Yeah, if we're going to deliberate between meetings, then we definitely do need to have a quorum. So the 3 half-hour slots on the Monday and Tuesday, these are the only ones that we've come up with, because that's...
No, they're the ones that come up soonest.
Okay.
And people had picked some other dates later on, but I think we have kind of a gap between the 9th and maybe the 18th for one reason or another, because there were conflicts or other things going on. So it's just a question again of, how soon we want to get started on these and how many we want to try to get done in one fell swoop.
Do people think, should we suggest like 20 minutes per person that gives us 10 minutes to discuss between sessions? Do we want to set that up, or just kind of let the chips fall?
I prefer to maximize time with the interviewees. I feel like if people are done talking and they want to, we can dismiss them early and discuss, but.
All right. So
Yeah, I do too, because I think also there will be some council members who are much more loquacious than others. And so, I think we shouldn't be too super strict. Maybe if they take the full half hour, we can discuss it, after the less loquacious person who follows them, kind of thing.
Right, and particularly because in most cases, people have said, I could be there 6:37 or 7:30. So we could set one for 6:30 and then the next one 45 minutes later, so that we're confident we'll have a full half hour with somebody, and maybe, 5 or 10 minutes extra if things are going along well and we want to talk to people. But if we want to, if we happen to be done faster with somebody, we can just move on. I'm just going to silence my phone. I apologize for that.
So the way this is set up, if we fill the 6:30, and 7:30 slots, we still have the 7 to 7:30 for our own discussion purposes. That's still open, correct?
Basically, we've got people who've signed up at half-hour intervals from 6 to 7:30.
Oh, I thought you said 6:30, and 7:30.
Well, some people chose all of those. They said I could be there 6:37 or 7:30.
Okay.
One person picked just one slot.
All right. So we've got 4 slots per evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
What were the slots for the 9th?
The same, 6, 6:30, 7, 7:30.
So is the question we're considering whether to have this on both Monday and Tuesday night, or just
Yes.
one of the two? In my mind, I feel like one night might be preferable, but,
Well, we have 5 people, so
so they
we
might
can't do it all.
pack it in, okay.
So I think the question is whether you want to do it on the 8th and the 9th, or whether you want to do some of them on one of those nights and then not do any more until the 18th.
I see.
I would prefer to have these sooner rather than later, but I realize that may be a challenge for some people to have the meetings 2 nights in a row.
I'm fine with doing them both nights in a row. I agree. I'd rather get these wrapped up. So I'll make myself available. If we can get a quorum.
I think if we can confirm this, if we have a quorum present physically, other commission members can tune in on Zoom. That's legit. They cannot, we won't be voting, I assume we won't be voting, and so they can't vote. They don't count as a quorum, but they can attend via Zoom. Is that
Right.
correct?
Why wouldn't they be able to vote?
You can't vote on Zoom.
You have to be present, physically present.
Oh, you can't. Gotcha, right.
We need to make sure, we're scheduling for the executive conference room. We had trouble creating a virtual meeting in this room. I don't remember the availability for that room for next week, but I assume that it was okay.
It would be really pretty weird for us to be sitting here and the council member in the audience.
Well, they would have to be at a mic,
The podium.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
at the podium.
Podium, yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's a little less weird.
But
Well, but that's kind of, seems uncordial to have somebody stand for the whole time. It's,
But the principle I was asking about, if we have a quorum physically present, other commission members can attend via Zoom, is that correct, Lee?
Yes, so we just won't be able to vote on
I
anything.
hear you.
Yes, they
can't
won't be
vote.
able to vote.
Thank you.
Yeah, they can't vote, and I just want to be sure we have a quorum present in case there is something that we need to vote on.
Like, never invite this person again.
Well, how are we going to know that? Because we've got 2 people absent this week.
Well, we had previously determined that people were available for these dates that we were offering to the city council people, and, you know, we knew that you were going to be out of town, but you thought you could participate on Zoom, so.
I mean, it doesn't, I'd prefer to not do 2 nights next week, but I'll go with the flow.
And then I'm looking at the responses, just Harriet and I can't do the 9th, for instance, but everyone else can. So it looks like there's a quorum on paper. Everyone just has to show up.
And I'm with Greg. I'd rather get these processed as soon as possible, so 2 nights in a row is okay.
I say the same as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go with whatever the larger group decides.
And Greg, you can do January 8th?
I'll make it work, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all for being flexible about that. I think it will really help us crystallize what we're doing once we start having these conversations. And then we may want to do some further follow-up with elected officials to get their attention to complete these things. So I'll keep you posted on that, and, you know, we may want to divide and conquer on that in terms of reaching out to people.
How will the Zooms be arranged? Is somebody going to send out Zooms to everybody, just in case somebody falls sick at the last minute?
Well,
Yeah,
we'll
if we-
we'll
if we-
arrange them if we know we need one. I think it sounds like we need one for the 9th. I don't know that we'll need one for the 8th, but.
Yeah, we do,
we'll
me.
certainly ask. Oh, okay. Well, we'll arrange it. Harriet's going to be out of town. But Lee will set those up, and you could send the
Yes.
Zoom links out.
It'll be go-to meetings, not Zoom, but
Okay. Okay, any other thoughts on that? Okay. So the other development is that, moving on to item 3, Lee was able to get us tentatively booked in the community center for February 12th from 5:30 to 8, and this would be for a meeting with the public. So we hadn't,
we did-
I hadn't circulated another doodle because I was waiting to hear from Lee on what dates potentially would be available. So this is breaking news that Lee just got late this afternoon on that day being available. So you don't have to tell me right now, but you can let me know in the next day or so if that day and time is going to work for you.
Can you repeat it, please?
February 12th?
It's a Monday.
From 5:30 to 8. So the notion would be that we would plan for the public meeting to start at 6, but we would have the room at 5:30 so people could start filing in and settling into a seat and all that kind of good stuff.
We skipped over item C, didn't we? I'm sorry, I got lost because in agenda item 6C, we didn't go over a second January date or discussion of scheduling public input. We just jumped to number,
Well, I think we need to find a second February date. And what I was saying a minute ago is I hadn't circulated a new doodle poll on February because I was waiting to see what our potential dates were for the community center. So now that we know that we can have our public meeting on February 8th, I will circle back with all of you with a new doodle poll so we can pick a second date for a meeting in February.
And just
I thought you said, is it February 8th or?
February 12th, right?
Yes.
February 12th is the date for the meeting with the public.
right.
But we have one scheduled the first week of February, right, Lee?
I think so. I don't have the dates, but
Yeah, I think we do. It was the second date in the month that was problematic because of room conflicts. So we are set for the 7th, and we had to pick a second date for February. And I think we were looking potentially at the 28th, but I'm not sure if we got to consensus on the 28th because we were trying to figure out what to do with this other meeting. But I don't know that I don't think we settled on the 28th.
okay.
The minutes will tell us that. And then I'll work with Lee to get dates sorted out for the rest of our standing meetings, for March, April, May. But, we haven't really seriously looked at the, that project plan document to try to really lay out what we have to accomplish in order to finish our task by the end of May. So I would really ask that you all look at that more seriously for our next meeting, and I'll take another look at it and tweak it and get out a revised draft to you so that we can see how how things are looking in terms of how many meetings we need. Do we have enough meetings to accomplish what we need to accomplish, or we're going to have to schedule more meetings?
Linda, I have a question. If it turns out that we need to schedule like a lot more meetings to finish our task, is that deadline set in stone, or can we ask for an extension as opposed to
We
having
can ask for an
meetings a week?
extension, but I think we'll just want to review it and see how it looks and what,
Yeah,
what seems reasonable for us to try to accomplish. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, everybody has to have 5 meetings a week. We have to just see what's realistic and what we think we can accomplish in the time we have.
Although I don't think we have too much wiggle room, because if we want to get it on the ballot for next year, it has to be submitted to city council by, I think, June.
This year.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
is it June or is it August?
June. Well,
There's a deadline for council to submit in September, but they're going to have time to consider your proposals and,
And they take a month off
right.
in the summer,
Which month do they take off? I
July, usually.
think it's July, yeah, okay. So if worse came to worse, we could give it to council on August 1st, if we can't. I mean, that would be not desirable, but
Right.
Well, we could, it just, if they
Yeah.
are in third reading by September, it's going to wait a year.
we're also considering the citizens initiative needs time to get on the ballot as well. If any of those are going to be put forward based on our recommendations.
yeah, but that's not going to work even if we do it by June, is it? Does the citizen initiative come after what council is going to do? Yeah, there's not going to be room for a citizens initiative
Because
anyway.
they would only decide that after council.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I don't think we thought about that before.
Well, that wouldn't, I mean, the other thing is, this is a pretty heavy-duty year coming up. We got a presidential election and a major U.S. Senate election. So, I mean,
Well, but that's in other spheres besides the city of Cleveland
Right.
Heights.
Right, but I mean,
Yeah, I think we have to be thoughtful about how, what our path is to finishing our job. And that's why the plan is important, because it helps us to get our head around the steps that we have to complete. And different meetings that we want to set up, different people we want to have come in and talk to us and really start laying out some invitations so we can get all that on the calendar and allow ourselves enough time to get draft documents prepared in the meantime. Because that's going to take some time too. So again, I will look forward to hearing from you just to confirm whether you're available February 12th from 5:30 to 8. And then I'll also reach out to our facilitator to confirm that he's available. And then once we have confirmation on all of that,
February 8th or February 12th? Oh,
February 12th from 5:30 to 8 o'clock.
okay.
I will not be available. I'll be out of town.
And you out of town for the day or the week or?
From February 7th to the 14th. So I'll also miss, if you guys do anything, I'll probably miss the 7th, the 8th. If you guys do it, So,
In February.
yep.
But those dates I was talking about for meeting with city council are in January.
Oh, yes. When you say 8th, you mean January 8th.
January 8th and January 9th are the two dates when we had 5 city council people available.
Yes, 8th, good, 9th, I have class. Then come February.
January.
January. And then in February, I am out of town from the 7th to the 14th. So I will
Yes.
miss the 12th.
Yeah, and then the other challenge in February is I'm away from the 15th until the end of the month. So, we have to find a date that works, and I just want to confirm how many people it works for or doesn't work for, and then we can sort out whether we need to try to find another date or if that's the best we can do. And
Meaning the public meeting.
the public meeting, yeah.
And for the public meeting, do we need to have a quorum?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, ideally, it would be really good, I think, if all of us could be there for the public.
Ideally, it would be good.
I mean, that's a little bit perhaps more important than for these other special meetings, interviews of council, that sort of thing.
For the public meeting, have we decided that it will be facilitated by Kevin Butler?
Well, the idea was that he was going to make a presentation to explain what the charter review is all about. And we haven't really gotten into the details of how the meeting would proceed, but I was thinking in terms of having, perhaps we would have a few defined topics that we would like to have specific public input on, and then have breakout tables so people could talk in small groups about one or more of those topics, as well as, if they had any other ideas they wanted to bring forth for us, they could certainly mention it. But have small group discussions with reports out so that people have an opportunity to talk. Sometimes if you have a big meeting and it's just come to the microphone, a few people will get up and talk, but there are a lot of people who aren't really comfortable getting up in front of a big room of people, and smaller breakout groups make it more inclusive for people to participate and feel heard.
One concern I have that we are not a court, and this public presentation is not a trial, but we all know that there are going to be accusations made. How do we deal with that?
Accusations about what?
About mayoral overreach and this and that and the other thing, the same reasons that we're here reviewing the charter.
Well, I think that when people are in small breakout groups, people may have ideas about approaches to address issues that they identify. And in some cases, they may be issues that are properly addressed in a charter, and in some cases, people may be presenting issues that we may want to hear their concerns, and elected officials may want to hear their concerns, but it may not necessarily be something that it's appropriate to address in a charter. So,
My concern is that in the public comment, in the open mic comment, if somebody starts making accusations against elected officials, how do we deal with that?
I would suggest that we start, and I'd like to hear what you all think, but I would suggest that we start in a way similar to the way we started our proceedings as our commission and say, here's our rules of engagement, be respectful, give other people a turn, be considerate of other people's views, and just let people know that we want everybody to remain respectful and civil. And if somebody starts getting, out of order, we'll ask them to stop. And if they can't contain themselves, we'll ask them to leave. That's kind of the limit of our authority. Just ask people to be nice.
So that's why I was asking if Kevin would be facilitating, because I think that's where a facilitator would be the best person to intervene during the open mic period, because that takes the burden off us as individuals, because we're going to say, somebody say something, somebody stop them kind of thing. I think, so that when you're talking to Kevin about this, you might mention during the open mic period, because some of these things are very heated issues in the community, we need to make sure that we're going to not let it turn into charges and countercharges being made, because I think that would be very destructive to this community approach.
I feel like
We're
that's a
also
role
public
that,
body, so I'm not going to speak up to limit somebody's First Amendment rights. I mean, it's not a private discussion, this is a public discussion, and I
That
agree
is-
that we should try to keep them on point, but if they want to get up there
You're
and
going to have to take into
use their one-
consideration as, there are rules for public comment.
Right.
And you can't restrict based on content of speech. This
No,
being
we
a
could ask
public
people to
body.
limit their comments to a certain amount of time.
That is I think, most effective. That's why most public comment
Yeah.
is just restricted to time.
Yeah, I think that will really do the larger part of the job in terms of containing emotion.
I have the opposite concern. I'm worried that there isn't, I mean, I'd like to know how many people are listening to these meetings, because nobody's coming. Do we know who's listening? Are there 50 people listening at any given meeting, do you think?
You would have to check the YouTube video
Yeah.
views, I think.
I mean, I think we need to make sure this meeting is well advertised so that we have participation. I'm concerned with lack of participation.
And Harriet,
That's one of the reasons for trying to get the meeting on the calendar so we can have a period of weeks to let people know it's coming. Craig?
I think people are watching. I mean, when I pull up YouTube city council meetings and these pop up in the feed, there's 50 to 60 people watching most of our meetings to check them out.
yeah, I've pulled up the YouTube page just now, and yeah, we're 40 or so, give or take, 10.
I think the key need is to make sure people know about the venue, right, and the purpose, and that's just something which we'll have a better handle on when we know when we're doing it, and the rest of it.
That's good.
Are we on item D now, under the C about the consider options for communication from the public?
Well, we have an email set up, but I don't know if has that been announced to the public?
No, I think, no, not in any way. That could go in the city newsletter, or could go with any advertisement for the community meeting. But it's on the website. That's the extent of the advertisement of that.
So could I draft a little notice that could be posted in the newsletter?
Yeah, I don't know the process for that, but if you draft something, I can hand it to.
Draft something, cheerful and encouraging to get people to participate?
At what point, when are you deciding for sure that the meeting's going to be February 8th? Or
12th.
12th, sorry.
I have to hear back from people that it works with their calendars. So we should know in a couple days. If people get back to us, within a day or two, we'll know.
Would it save some time if we did it, if he told you right now?
I don't know if everybody has their calendars with them. If you do and you can tell us right now, do it. But I hate to take up meeting time with people scurrying around their calendars because it just
can do
doesn't
it.
seem to be the best use of everybody's
I
time.
can do it.
Can we set this date up outside of a meeting, though? If we don't decide tonight, will we have to wait until our next meeting?
I think we can respond on availability for a date without violating open meeting rules. You're just saying whether you're available for a date. That's not a problem, is it?
But if the date doesn't work, then it's going to be next meeting, you have to
Yeah,
wait to discuss it.
why don't we just tell you right now? It's quick, it's quick. I can do it. I can do it.
Okay,
Fine by me. I mean, that date.
all right, we'll give you a minute. Go.
What about you three?
I just answered.
No, you guys down there.
February 12th works.
I can attend.
I can attend.
Great.
Okay, so Jonathan,
You
you're the
have a
only,
quorum then, yeah,
okay,
you're good.
thank you. And I'll check with Stephanie and Roland.
Can I ask, who's going to coordinate communications on this then? Because we
Say
could also
coordinate
use,
communications, what do you mean?
informing the public about the
I'm going to
meeting.
prepare a notice to go into the newsletter, the city newsletter, to let people know we're going to have this, say, details to follow, but, save the date kind of thing.
Right. Is that Future Heights? Is that the Observer or is that Future Heights? It's the
I thought you were
Observer?
talking
Okay.
about the city's email.
The city's newsletter.
Is the Observer?
No.
No,
That's
the
Observer.
city has a newsletter.
No, it's they email
Okay,
a newsletter
so-
out, yeah.
I missed that.
That's a good point. Should we put it in the Observer as well?
Yeah, my point
can,
is we can use multiple venues and I would encourage us to use everything we possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only trick with the Observer is we have to find out what their publication deadline is. They have a longer lead time for their print publication than for their online publication, and I'm not sure what their deadlines are.
It's usually like the 9th or the 10th to get it published in the future, the next month. So January 9th or 10th. somebody
Okay,
could
do you
write a
want
letter or-
to check that out and report back?
Sure.
And does the
Online.
city put things on their social media? Lee, do you know?
I know they have a couple accounts. I think they could probably do that if you asked them.
That's how I found out about this commission.
All right.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. But I think multiple avenues is good.
And if you book at the community center, do they automatically, we go on their calendar or?
You're on their calendar right now for the
Uh,
12th.
And we tentatively were on it.
Okay, because I know that that's another thing, if they, I don't know, they put up things on a bulletin board or whatever, but if you're at the community center, you would physically know being there, saying, oh, look what's coming up on the 12th.
I don't know how they post it, do you?
Don't know either. I can call if you want.
Yeah, okay.
Cool.
Are there any other venues or any other ways to reach the public?
If they announce it at a council meeting,
Yeah, we could certainly request that it be announced. Okay. Any other ideas? Okay. So let's see. Item 7, we've already touched on this. We have to do another doodle poll. So the next item under new business is to commence review of the current city charter. We ready to turn to that?
Yep.
Okay.
So a point of clarification, you're talking about 7A, right, under new business? Are you saying, so we already meet twice a month, is this twice a month just to work, like, can you?
Twice a month for what I call standing meetings.
Okay.
And then to the extent we need it, we will have extra meetings.
Okay, so you're asking for extra meetings.
Well, the item in 7A was to pick a second meeting for February.
And why isn't the 21st automatic?
Because the rooms aren't available.
Thank you,
Neither one of the rooms with recording capability is available.
thank you.
Okay, so
Do we need to pick that date now?
which date?
I mean, the second February meeting.
I don't think so, Harriet.
Okay.
It's too complicated. I'll send a doodle poll out for that.
Love doodle polls.
So looking at the current charter, we have on the screen the proposal that came from the 2019 commission. And then you all have a paper copy or your laptop with a copy of the current charter, right? So I would propose that we proceed through the charter as we did with the 2019 draft, just go through it section by section. You know, we did, in some cases, when we were going through the 2019 draft, we referred to things that were in the current charter, but we didn't methodically go through it. So, you know, in a sense, this should be a little bit easier because we've looked at some pieces, parts of it, and we have a reference point in the 2019 version, which is compared against the current charter. So looking at the first section,
I'm just getting through all this is just the table of contents. There we go.
yeah, so looking at the preamble in the current one was proposed to be changed as it's on the screen here, and we did already discuss and agree on what's on the screen,
Did we
which
made
is
some
slightly
notes on that.
revised from what's in the 2019 draft. I think we made a few edits to that.
Does this reflect those edits? Because we took out some of the Chamber of Commerce language about that sort of thing. So I don't think this reflects the version that we agreed that we would want to use in the future.
Let me see.
Outstanding quality of life, I believe, was part of the, so
Yeah,
who
that was
has the,
supposed to come out.
who has the
and
notes?
I think Jonathan has the version with the notes, don't you, Jonathan?
Sure. I don't know where. Are you talking about the other Word file? Is that what we edited?
Yeah.
Is it on the drive?
I have notes, I think.
Well, I have notes too, but we have it on paper, on screen.
No, I
Might be
mean,
on
is
the other
it on your
computer.
jump drive?
Yeah, we can look through that. I don't know if it is or not.
I think it's important, if we're going to do this, then we need to look at the changes we made to the 2019.
I agree with you.
My notes just say that we just deleted "and provides an outstanding quality of life through excellent municipal services,"
Well, we also added the word justice,
and added the word justice. Those,
yeah, liberty, equality, and justice. Those were the two changes. But I agree that we don't want to reinvent the wheel here. We already went through this, so we should have the version that we annotated.
Can I suggest if we know we've already resolved it, we don't have to spend time on it here, we'll just access that information then for purposes of our record.
Well, I want to know how I want to see that if we're looking at the current charter, I want to see how we massaged the proposed revision kind of thing so that we can see if it can be folded in to this or if we need to make revisions in the current charter.
I agree, that's pretty important.
And I agree with Guy that we should move forward. So we've got two.
We're just going to be duplicating work again and again and again.
Well, no, because we already reviewed it and came to an agreement on what it should be. You know, and when we did it, we looked at the current charter and we looked at the revised one and we made a few tweaks to the revised one and said, yeah, we should go with that.
We didn't look at the current charter. I remember that because I suggested we do and we didn't.
It's compared against the current charter. So when we looked at this language,
No, this is, they were using before the mayoral switch, they were using a charter that is no longer the current charter.
but that didn't change in the mayoral switch.
Preamble didn't.
The preamble didn't change.
Well, yeah, it did. It did change.
I do feel like we ought to be using, I mean, if we're looking at the current charter, this is not the current charter.
No, we can.
No, this is the current charter.
This-
We don't have a Word copy of the current charter, so we're using,
No, but
F copy.
Charter, the preamble is 3 lines long. We were not looking at that. I agree with, I think we should,
Harriet, the language that's crossed out on the screen is what's in the current charter.
The red line version, correct.
the current charter is 3 lines.
I know, that's what's crossed out in red.
So does anybody remember why we decided, or the review board decided to take out the location about the county of Cuyahoga and the state of Ohio? They Xed that out. Do we remember why they did that?
I don't know why they did it. I don't
Right,
think
Lee,
we
do you have
a
any
way of knowing
opinions
that.
on whether the statement of where Cleveland Heights is should be in the preamble?
I mean, according to the summary guide that the charter changes, this was the recommendation. So that's not going to help us, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we did, though, look at the proposed revision, and we made some changes to it, taking out some language and adding liberty. So I think when we can retrieve that, we should say that that was, when we were reviewing this, that was our decision, that that would be appropriate language to put in here so that we can move forward. So we did agree on a revised preamble statement, which is not what we're seeing here, but it was the one that is in some document somewhere.
Correct?
Okay.
So I added a comment here for the whole section, match the updated language from the prior review.
From our prior review, not this review.
Well, I can simply tell you, there were two changes, one phrase deletion and the substitution of the word justice, substitution of the word justice for liberty.
We added justice. We didn't take out liberty.
Oh, I thought we took out liberty.
All right, so then that takes care of the preamble, I guess, for the time being.
This seems to be imprecise to me.
Anyone have any other thoughts about the preamble?
Nope.
And Lee, would it be possible to find out why the previous Charter Review Commission decided to take out the County of Cuyahoga and State of Ohio in the preamble? Or if they're,
Only by asking.
Maybe in their report.
I don't see it in the report.
Yeah, it's not in the report. They just said they modeled it after Burbank, California's preamble. Other than that, they just wanted to make it more inclusive of Cleveland Heights, more indicative of Cleveland Heights.
okay. Well, as long as there's no legal need for the county and state to be included in the preamble, I guess it cuts down on the language.
So,
Well, I don't see any problem in adding it if it makes you feel more comfortable having the county and the state in there.
I'm just curious about why it's in the current charter. It is in the current charter. And I don't know if that's significant that it needs to be that kind of specific designation or if it's just fluff. It's like something from the Wizard of Oz, you know, in the county of the land of Oz, that sort of a thing. But it's not, it's what, 7 or 8 words, so it's no major deal to keep it in for sure.
well, I think there's a real positive to some of this addition here that the 2019 people added, exercise the benefits of home rule, because the state is gradually chipping away at home rule every chance they get.
I think we established that. I'm not questioning anything that we approved from this. I'm just going back and saying, why did they take out the county and state? And do we need to put that in? Because apparently we can't find any rationale for why they took it out. But I don't want to hold things up at this point.
Well, so do we want to substitute our revisions to the 2019 charter for the current preamble in the current, or for the,
I believe that was our intention, yes.
I think that's what we agreed on. Anybody have a different view?
Nope.
The only thing that I would add to this discussion, if we did want to include Cuyahoga. The only thing I would add to the discussion, if we did want to include Cuyahoga in the state of Ohio, we could also consider including a land acknowledgement, which might be a little too much to put in the charter, but I think it could be a an interesting thing to
A what
acknowledge.
acknowledgement?
A land acknowledgement, so talking about the indigenous people who were on the land of Cleveland Heights before the city. But that might be a larger conversation.
It might be a larger conversation, but, I'm in a national organization where everybody, when they introduce themselves, they say what indigenous peoples occupied the land where they are. And it does seem to be a direction that the nation is moving in. If we put all that other stuff, this county, state, blah, blah, blah.
Right, which is why I was thinking if we were going to situate ourselves, in the state, then we could also do that a little bit more historically.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are legal consequences to doing that in a city charter as opposed to, another organization doing it. I know I've heard, I think at the Cleveland Playhouse, they make some announcement to that effect, but it doesn't have the same consequence to them as it might for a city.
Well, I'm guessing that a city attorney would say, don't put it in there because that would expand the chances of the indigenous land claims, because they're land claims for almost, a huge part
Not a
of it.
frivolous concern. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Definitely something to consider. I'm looking at this recent John Coe University land acknowledgement. It's talking about two specific indigenous peoples, the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, which I probably mispronounced, peoples.
Haudenosaunee is the Iroquois.
Right, a member of the Confederacy who occupied spaces throughout the Great Lake region. But
I actually looked it up. There's like 5 or 6.
Oh, there's a lot.
we definitely have to do the
For
research.
here, that were here in this county.
Oh, I know. There's
Yeah.
a lot. There's probably a score.
Oh, no, there's not a score.
There's a lot. There's a lot. But I don't think it's something that we would do without checking with the law department because it could have consequences that we're not anticipating.
Definitely.
I'm just putting a note, do we want to include the county and state reference? If so, should or can we include land acknowledgement?
Well, I think that's a good reason to not include the county and state reference if it becomes too complicated. If we do, I agree with you. We should add them.
Does anybody want the county and the state acknowledged? Once, twice, no? Okay, we're not going to put it back in.
I would like to know, is there a legal requirement? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think asking the law department about legal requirement and the potential repercussions of a land acknowledgement.
I think Drew's asking if there's a legal requirement to specify the county and the state.
Yes, I mean both.
The most we've got to go on is that the previous review commission said they had submitted this for legal review. So I'm assuming that there is no legal reason, but I think we need to be responsible and say, is there a legal reason why the state and county need to be included? And if not, then we can just remove them and not have to deal with the land
Why
acknowledgement
don't we
issue.
just include them and not worry about it?
Well, if we're going to include them, I think we should go with your suggestion to potentially include the indigenous peoples.
I think we
rather have
definitely
all
need, I think we
excluded.
definitely need to get legal advice on any land acknowledgements.
Issue though, Harry.
I know, but I'm not crazy about including county and state either. I just think it's
A
frivolous.
lot of the other charters have it. I just flipped through the other charters.
We just
and
agreed, all of
three
us,
them-
that we wanted them out, so.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did. And then you raised the question of is
We
it a
agree
legal
when I'm
requirement?
disagreeing. We didn't agree.
did not take a
Jonathan
vote.
counted down without any, excuse me, it's just, we did not agree.
Oh, I thought we did. Sorry.
I would say that in my recollection, when we looked at the preamble before, I don't think we focused on the deletion of the county and the state. And I would say, I don't see any reason not to include the county and state, so we could just add them back in. That's kind of to me, that's a pretty easy decision. Adding other language about Native Americans who lived here in the days before Europeans attacked, that's a different issue, and I just don't know what the consequences of that.
To actually, should we vote then on whether or not to include the county and state, and then also say we need legal advice on a land acknowledgement? So to kind of put this, at least half of this issue to rest tonight?
Sounds good to me.
So I would move that we add back in the language, or use the language in the current city charter in the preamble that says in the county of Cuyahoga in the state of Ohio.
Seconded.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay.
And then we will seek legal advice on land acknowledgements, okay.
Is that another motion?
Oh, do we need one for that?
there's a request.
I guess so.
I don't think we need a motion for a request for the legal department.
Yeah, I think we do need a motion.
Yeah? All right, yeah.
Well, I'll move that we ask for legal guidance on whether or not a land acknowledgement would be appropriate in the city charter.
Seconded.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Sorry, Jonathan, you have to keep editing your notes.
No, not a problem in the slightest.
All right.
Are we ready to move to Article 1?
Right.
So I would say that these are relatively minor changes that were made. I believe that we approved the revised version in the 2019 proposed charter, but we did have a question that we wanted to check with the facilitator on concerning whether there were any changes that needed to be made to this due to an Ohio Supreme Court case. I don't recall whether you looked into that, Lee. Do you remember that?
I think this is before my time. I haven't, Article 1 I wasn't here for, but I can certainly do that now.
I just don't remember if it was on the list that you put together, or I guess Graham put together a list of things that we wanted to get input on.
Can pull that up.
So we'll have to park that. Anybody have any other thoughts on Article 1?
Well, I'm not clear. Are we going to go with the one that we previously agreed on, or the one that's in the current charter?
One that we previously agreed on, which is the one up on the screen. So that's showing with the compare markings, changes to the current charter.
And if we,
And we had agreed to that, but we wanted to check with the facilitator on whether there were language changes that were necessary because there had been an Ohio Supreme Court case. And I think it had to do with the procedures for annexing or deleting territory. It was something like that.
so we would need to refer to our notes from our previous session on this one.
Well, my notes say that we had said yes to the entirety of this paragraph. In the 2019 version.
I'll go back and check the minutes on whether we needed input on that one legal point, because I have a note in my margin that we needed that.
We did request the input. I don't have an answer for that in my documents, but I also may just not have found it yet, so.
What the input was about.
I would also like to request input on whether, not just here, but throughout the charter, we need, if there's a significant difference between the term voters and registered voters. There are some places where we disagreed on whether we should use the term voters or registered voters. That's not the same as those who voted in previous elections, because that's when we get into the recall and initiative, there's a percentage that we refer to. But just for the general language, whether voters or registered voters would be the correct usage.
I believe, Drew, I believe the advice we got on that is that when there's a reference to voters, or electors in the context of a number. So in this case, it's saying a majority of registered voters. We would want to be clear that we're referring to registered voters as of the date of the election. So in some cases, for instance, when you're talking about the number of voters who would need to sign a recall petition, and it's X% of the registered voters, it would be registered voters as of the date of the last election. That's, I think, the salient point. If it's a reference, for instance, in the qualifications for running for city council or mayor, folks have to be registered voters on the day they file their papers to run. So that's setting it with a date. But I think just a general reference to, I think there were some references to, what's the reference that was obsolete, Lee? That was a different variation on,
On the registered voter?
yeah, you have to tie it to a date, otherwise it's impossible to
Yeah, there-
determine what the number is, because it
the
changes
issue
daily.
The issue we were discussing is people who had voted in the most recent either presidential or this or that sort of thing. That's not the number of registered voters, that's the number of people who actually voted. And that was the critical issue on some of these, because the number of registered voters may be wildly out of proportion to the number of people who actually voted.
True,
And
true.
some of the language was, we want to make sure we're basing this on the people who actually voted. So when we get to those sections, we'll be able to look at that again. I know Harriet and I sort of disagreed on, she said, well, they're not voters unless they're registered. And I think anybody, who is eligible to vote should be considered a voter, whether they're currently registered or not for purposes of counting, but for purposes of denoting sort of a thing. So that's kind of a larger issue. But just this is one instance where we're looking at the term register, and it does say voters voting on that question, so it is a specific date or an implied date kind of a thing, which would include they were registered if they voted in that particular election. So it may seem nitpicking, but I really want to make sure we're understanding the implications of the language we're using.
And we discussed this on October 18th, specifically relating to Article 7, Section 1 and Section 3. But yes, we raised the question.
What's the difference between electors and registered voters?
That's another one. And registered voters versus voters or citizens. Residents.
Yeah. Yeah, in some.
Well, residents is a way bigger pool
Yes.
than voters who are currently registered and therefore entitled to vote.
Right.
There are some places where we may want to use the term residents because we want to make sure that we are including people who may not be voting, may not be registered to vote, may not even be, natural-born citizens kind of thing, just to make sure we're being inclusive. But for this section, I believe with double-checking on some of these issues here, I think we basically are okay with the revision as we revised it.
So we still need to make sure we're clear on the differences among electors, registered voters, and voters.
Well, electors is an obsolete term.
Yeah, I think we agreed to ditch electors and change it to either voters or registered voters, depending on the context.
That we did.
Were we going to get that from the facilitator or argue ourselves or Jennifer?
That was a facilitator, law department, legal
Okay.
pursuit.
Got it.
But we got input on that, didn't we? I think we did.
So we're good to go with this, right? Registered voters?
No, we aren't. Again, we're not in agreement yet. When we're talking about people who voted in a specific election, if they voted, they must have been registered. But when we were talking about a pool of potential voters, some of them may be registered and some may not be. And I want to make sure we are not cutting anybody out of that consideration. If they are a potential voter, whether or not they are registered, I think they should be counted as a voter.
If you're, well, this is where you get into trouble, I think, in creating a pool that is so uncertain that you don't know whether you've met a test. So for instance, if you're talking about how many signatures do you need on a petition, you have to anchor that to an election that took place in the past and the number of voters who voted in that election.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's a moving target and you never know whether you've satisfied the requirement.
That's correct, and I think in the sections where that comes up, we did say people who voted in that last election, we did say it's going to be tied to a tangible date and election thing. So we are covering ourselves on those issues. But when we're talking about more general terms, for instance, like if it says voting on that issue, if they voted on that issue, they must have been registered. Otherwise, we're implying that other people voted on it who weren't registered. And maybe this is just too nitpicking for some people, I really don't know. So that's,
I think, Drew, that if you want to expand the definition to voters to people who could vote but may or may not be registered, I think we should say potential voters. Otherwise, it's not accurate. If somebody is 21 years old and they're not registered to vote, they are a potential voter. They are not a voter. So if we're gonna modify voters with registered, I think we ought to modify your term voters with potential voters.
okay. In this specific context, it refers to people who voted in a specific election. If they voted in that election, they must have been registered. Otherwise, we're saying there were some illegal votes cast.
Correct.
So saying registered voters who voted in this election is a bit redundant. And I just, but I don't know if this is a battle worth fighting any longer.
Well, let me say, I believe that what we decided when we previously discussed this was that once we got a draft of this document together, we were going to go through it and make sure that we used consistent references to voters. And that's how we resolved it when we discussed it previously. You're agreeing, Graham?
Yes, that is what we agreed. That the language should be consistent across the charter, one way or the other, registered voters or voters.
So should we just earmark this and move on?
I think that makes sense.
Yep.
Anybody have any further points on this? Okay. So Article 2, form of government. So Article 2 in the current charter is powers. And that refers to, well, it's the language that's in 2.2 in the 2019 form. So could you go down a little bit further on that page? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, see, in the version on the screen, there's a form of government and then powers, which is not,
Yeah.
Deleted the whole section. We deleted 2.1, including the title.
Well, we decided, according to my notes here, that we would revise the sentence to say that it would be known as elected mayor-city council form of government instead of council-mayor form of government.
Well, that's not,
So it's not in the current charter at all, but when we reviewed the 2019 version, we thought we should add the statement, but change it to reflect our actual current form of government.
Right, because I believe they had this city council, city manager was what the
Correct.
2019 version
I think
reflected.
we should check to see what the official title is, because I don't think it's elected mayor, city council form of government. I don't think that such a term exists.
if I recall properly, one of the problems with the charter is there's places where it does say council government, and then there are places it talks about the mayor. So I think the current charter itself has some of those conflicts. At least once I remember it popping up, because it was never fully integrated.
Greg, do you recall whether this was considered that needed to be in the initiative that created this situation?
I don't think we discussed this
Okay.
with Citizens for Elected Mayor now. I think we did.
Can we refer this to legal assistance? Because the current charter does not have a form of government, and apparently it is legal. So do we need to add a form of government section to a possible proposed revised charter?
That's what we determined last time, was that we needed to check with the law department on 2.1.
Yeah, that's what mine.
And I don't think we've received a response from the facilitator regarding most of the things that we discussed
Right, no.
on
we've-
this first.
We've got a lot of questions hanging out there, and we need to get them answered so that we can move on.
Was this on your list of questions?
Yes, I kind of combined them into a, just because we have a bunch of questions
Yeah.
in these first few sections. So I didn't elucidate these specifically, but I requested that the facilitator review and answer all of these.
That's exactly what my notes say, too.
Yeah. So did he not answer this particular one?
Not to my recollection.
Okay.
So, is the question whether or not we need what's on the screen? And then make sure that says mayor,
No.
former government, or what is the actual?
What we said before, that we deleted the section with a note, check with law department facilitate.
So we deleted 2.1 former
Yeah,
government.
we deleted.
Okay.
Well, we,
Pending
Question is
approval.
check with law department.
yeah, we didn't delete it. We wanted, yeah.
Pending,
Yeah. And how do we get these questions to the law department, or either to Lee or to Kevin or to
He's
whomever?
sitting right here, so.
Well,
Hardy.
and I think like, Lee mentioned he was not here for it and Graham's looking at the
Right.
minutes. So it could have just been,
Yeah, no, but I'm asking now, Graham, is it okay with the commission if Graham just sends this list to poor Lee, who's going to be, doing extra homework for a couple of weeks kind of thing?
This might even be a Kevin task,
But I thought you put together a list when Kevin came on board, right? You kind of
Yes.
assembled the entire list of questions.
Yeah.
Yes, there were some of them that Kevin wasn't sure about and he needed to kind of do some follow-ups on. And yeah, I'll review and
But just for my benefit, was this version of 2.1 proposed by the 2019 commission? Did we decide to revise that to refer to a mayor-city council form of government? Or did we decide to delete it? Because I thought we edited it, not deleted it.
I thought we deleted it according to what I have here, but
I don't have it.
This is where it would be helpful to have that thing. But do we need a motion to say that Graham will look over his lists and forward the unanswered questions to Lee? Or can he just do that?
That's I can just do that.
Do we need a motion to that?
I don't think we need a motion. We already gave it to him. We just have to check back
All
with him
right,
on the
okay.
things that he
Yeah,
hasn't
just
already answered.
follow up.
Yeah, because Kevin said, check with your law department on those things, basically, so we need to move that forward. Sorry, Lee.
I'll raise this both to you, Lee, and to Kevin.
Okay.
is the same go for 2.2 powers? Where we had just had a question about the home rule?
We did, and Kevin told us which was the more appropriate. Was it home rule, does somebody remember, or self-government? Okay.
Not sure.
Yeah.
I'll go back and watch the video as well, or
Okay, yeah.
the other minutes to review, in case. I won't ask Kevin, thinks he's already answered this.
Because as Harriet said, with the state chipping away at the city's authority to enact legislation, we want to make sure we're using the correct language, whether it's self-government or home rule.
Certainly.
Otherwise, though, I think this was, well, we'll find out when we see our notes, but I don't think we had other major issues with this, just to make sure we're getting the most expansive language for our autonomy.
All right, so we've got to review our notes on what happened with 2.1 and get an answer to the question about whether we should refer to a form of government or not.
Yeah, that's exactly what I noted. And can it be, we need to include home rule or self-governance?
Yeah.
Okay,
And Graham said he would check the video to find out what the language is and can, I think as an information thing, he could just report back on that to the group.
so are we ready to go to 2.2?
I believe so.
So the powers, so again, the language on the screen is what was in the current charter as revised by the 2019 commission. And I had a question in the margin here that we were going to check with the facilitator on whether we needed an additional reference to Ohio law as opposed to just the Constitution. There's a reference to the Constitution and laws of Ohio. I think the question was whether we needed to refer to statutes of Ohio.
That should be enough. It's laws of Ohio that includes
Okay.
codified.
So we want to substitute what's on the screen with what is in the currently functioning charter, right?
Well, yes, we had agreed that what was on the screen was all right. But again, we were going to go back and look at this charter in its totality. So there are just some tweaks they suggested here. So I think the changes proposed in 2019 are fine. I don't have any other changes to the language that's in the charter currently. Does anybody have any other questions or concerns about the language currently in the charter under Article 2?
Wait a minute, are you talking about the document?
The current charter?
It's section 1 in the current charter, correct?
No, powers is section
It's
2.
Article 2,
Article 2.
powers.
Article 2.
Got
So-
it, thank you.
So just other than clarifying whether we need to say home rule or self-government in this part.
There were a number, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 changes recommended by the 2019 people that we agreed with. And so those changes are obviously not in
No,
this new
but they're up
document.
there, and we're okay with incorporating them in our, when we
We want
created.
to incorporate this into the,
Yes.
okay, I just want to be clear, okay.
Anything else anybody wants to talk about concerning Article 2 of the current charter? Go to Article 3, which is the city council.
Which in my defense has the word powers in the title. That's my confusion a minute ago.
Yeah,
Well, yes, it does, in Section 1.
yeah.
So we're in Article 3, Section 1.
But again, this is the powers of the city, and this is now the powers of the council. So it's two different domains, so to speak.
Right.
So they added quite a lot of language. And this is, this was to clear up some of the initial language which didn't have the staggered terms. So they're putting in staggered terms here,
Right.
3 in a regular municipal, and I believe 4 in the general, regular, blah, blah, immediately following, whatever kind of thing.
So the language changes from 2019 were really about using consistent references to different election markers. The substantive issue to think about, I think, in section 1 is whether we change the method for electing members of council. Now, we have that on our list of issues to consider. So this is where that comes up in the charter.
Right. And that's in like the 4th line at the end, 7 members elected at large. So that's the one section where we really want to have a discussion about a hybrid election system.
And I'm looking at the summary guide from the previous commission about the current versus their amended, and their note was to provide broader, more flexible authority to council, also added for clarity and consistency. So it sounds like clarity and consistency, and then we have a task on top of that because it gives the structure of at-large versus something else.
And
I note that here, that is,
Well, you could certainly note that this is the section that would be revised if we were going to recommend a different method of electing people to city council.
I will do that. I'm going to throw a comment at it.
And we're, not tonight, but as part of our discussion on that hybrid form, we're going to have to decide whether we would want all city councilors to be elected in the same election so that people would know specifically what sort of a council makeup they are voting for, rather than 4 possible ward in one election and then 3 at large in another election. I think it's for a
You
discussion.
do ranked choice, if we were to be proposing ranked choice voting, there would be no need to stagger terms.
Yeah, yeah. So that,
Less need.
when we look at this, that's one of the things we need to look at, whether we're going to elect in the entire city council at a specific election or if we're going to split it. That's even just with the hybrid form aside from ranked choice voting, which is going to exponentially complicate things.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you did ranked choice voting and hybrid, that would exponentially complicate things. Yeah, this whole section needs work.
You mean work in the sense that if we wanted to recommend a change in the way city council's elected, it needs work?
Right.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, it would.
But also, even my notes from last time may need work, separation of powers, come back to the part when I've got that, when that's, maybe, there's a lot of,
We also raised the issue of term limits in this section.
Yeah, I don't think we really talked any further about term limits.
No.
How do you all feel about term limits? I don't think they're,
Quote me on that. Quote me on that.
yeah?
Yeah, meh.
I think that there was a time when people, many people were thinking the term limits would be a good idea, and currently, I think maybe the pendulum has swung on that.
I mean, I think when you get to the local level, especially, the pool gets smaller, and part of the things you're on term limits is if the people who want to do it, if no one else is stepping up, then you'd have no one. Kind of what is it, better the devil you know?
well, yeah, but also locally, the experience has been if there's a vacancy or a vacuum, there, all kinds of people rush in to, I mean,
Well, and if we get into that, then we'll have to decide, are the term limits specific to the type of seat? If you are term limited as a ward counselor, maybe you can still run as an at-large counselor, so there's kind of wheels within wheels here. Anyhow, future discussion on that. Are we ready to look at qualifications?
Well, I guess what I want to understand, though, before we leave that subject is term limits something that we want to look at? Because that had never been on our issues list before.
It's not a concern of mine.
I would agree. I wouldn't look into it.
I agree. No interest.
Do we need a vote?
Does anyone feel strongly that we need it? Then I don't think we need a vote.
All right, okay.
All I have in my notes, quote, term limits could be discussed as well. And we did.
Term limits have been discussed, okay.
Maybe we could discuss discussing.
Okay.
That's disgusting.
All right, so is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about under Article 3, Section 1? And I guess the other question, though, is in terms of the subject of how members of city council are elected, is that something that you would like to have on a list of topics that will be discussed when we have the public meeting? How do you want to move forward on that, as opposed to just saying, oh, we care about that, let's put it over here? What are we going to do about it? Because it's January.
I think that's something we're going to talk with. Wasn't that on the survey list, or that's
Yeah.
one of our questions for the interviews?
It is?
I think it would be, I like the way you phrased it. I think we should let the public know that we're looking at this and how city council's elected. Because, I mean, we don't want to spring it on the public in April. We'd like to say, we're looking at this. We haven't really studied it in enough length yet to render an opinion, but we are interested in this and looking at it.
And I think one way, not the final way, but one way of doing that is at the presentation, we could say we are looking at a hybrid ward and at-large city council, and if we need to explain more about that kind of thing, and then ask for just like a show of hands, how many people would be like to move to that structure for the city council kind of thing. That won't be definitive because it's basically a very small sample, but at least that will give us an idea about if the people we're addressing are interested in that. And same thing with ranked choice voting and a few other things, that some of the larger structural changes we're looking at. I think if we say we're looking at this, would people be interested in changing to that? And again, we're just doing an informal poll. It's not binding or anything, but just to get a feeling for what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, any group that shows up for a public meeting is going to be a subset of a subset of a subset of the city. And I don't know, I mean, I have no idea how many people are interested in changing the way we look city council. I mean, I'm not interested in it, but there may be people in the city who are interested in it.
Well, see, and I think of it, at least, I'm not, one way is like the small groups you talked about. You could have different groups about some of these different topics, and then people could talk, and then it would basically take the temperature, because, what if no one cares at the community center? It kind of makes me wonder, should we put much effort into it? Because the people that showed up are saying, this is an issue, but oh man, do we care about ranked choice voting? Or, I would look to the public a bit from the meeting as direction.
Yeah, it could be. It could be a helpful indication of direction. On the other hand, I think you have to keep in mind that, again, it's a subset of people who are showing up, so they're not necessarily indicative of the view of everybody in the city, but it's, until you actually have a vote on something, you can't really know what a lot of people in the city, think about these issues.
I guess we're assuming that the people who show up for this will be people who have real interest in it, and that way what they tell us about their interests in hybrid form or ranked choice voting, again, it's, as you said, a small subset, but at least it'll be people who care enough to show up at a public meeting about this kind of thing. Also, we have to remember that anything we propose will be going before the city council, and they will have to approve it as well. So it's not like we're bringing the two tablets down from the mountain just yet. We're still, in the quarry.
Well, Linda, I would just like to comment on something you just said. I think we do know that there are a small group of people who are interested in hybrid hybrid council, because that is, and Craig could speak at length about this, but that was one of the things that the the CEM people were interested in, and the only reason they didn't propose it, according to them, was that they couldn't. So I think we know there is some interest in at least a hybrid form of government out there in the community. And, is that a fair statement, Craig?
I think that's partially fair in the fact that we didn't even go into it because we said we're limited to one subject, so we're not going to delve into the potential of wards. We'll leave that for a later date. But there was discussion of it, yeah, absolutely, or a hybrid system.
Oh, yeah, I think that's true. I think there are some people who are interested in it, but, I don't have any way of gauging how much interest there is.
Right.
I think one of the challenges is that we're in the middle right now of grappling with a new form of government. And you add on a whole different change in terms of how we elect city council, and it's, adding major change upon major change. And you haven't absorbed the first one yet as a city, and then you move on to something else. But different people could have different views about that.
And I think to the fact that, part of the reason we exist now is we're very early from the decade timeline of the annual or the decade charter review because of the new form of government. It was part of the reason I believe that this was created. So it's like, I think a large focus is smoothing it, making sure there's consistencies, and then maybe some of those issues will carry, but we don't have to worry about fixing everything or bringing everything. A lot of the work is going to be a nice, clean, understandable copy. I think is also going to be that has the mayor written in, and some of that clarity. It's always good to talk about, but I always think of that as kind of like the primary intent because we're early. It hasn't been 10 years since the last one.
Right.
Well, I think there's a difference of opinion about that among us. I think, that some of the problems that we're facing now are because we don't have a more perfect union, to quote the Constitution and President Obama. But, there are things that may be out there that could make some of the problems we're currently experiencing be mitigated and neutralized and solved even. So, I think there would be, I don't think our job is just to clean up what is here. I wouldn't even want to be on this commission if that's all we're doing. 2019 did that, although they didn't get any of their stuff in them.
I think Jonathan is basically saying that, the reason we were formed is to deal with these dangling issues, and we can be more expansive about our mission as well, which is great. Also, when we make our report to the city council, we could say we would suggest they look into a hybrid form of government and possibly appoint a commission to just research that alone, because that might be just a single charter amendment that would be worth, having a. We won't have time to really get into it because I've been thinking about how do you divide the city demographically and all that sort of stuff. So we might just want to make recommendations for the city to pursue commission or investigative work on both a hybrid form of government and ranked choice voting, just because we consider them important, but we also consider them at this point possibly just beyond our time frame to present a workable suggestion. Maybe. Not to discount the importance of those. They really are, because the people who've talked to me about being on the Charter Review Commission have said, I hope you will look into these things. So we want to register that we know these are important to some people, and it may be something that we need to kind of pass on to the council to say, please look into this.
Well, I think all this is a little bit premature right now. We can't be deciding now that we're not going to have time to do things. We should attempt to do what we can.
Especially as we're going into these interviews. I feel like we're going to learn a lot about what folks are looking to us to do.
So speaking of time, I was curious, we have almost about 15 minutes left, and I just want to bring attention to that fact because I don't know how much review public, the rest of the agenda will take. But just calling time, letting people know.
So,
Ideally, what would be nice is if I know this is asking too much of the facilitator, but ideally, we spent a long time, a very long time, months, going over the changes that the 2019 commission recommended. The current charter doesn't have any of that stuff in there. We spent a lot of time, approving their cleanup job. It'd be nice if our facilitator could just, we don't want to be discussing all these things all over again. I think we certainly don't want to spend the next 4 months going through the current charter. We essentially went through the current charter when we went through the 2019 revisions. And so it'd be nice if we could instruct the facilitator to alert us to anything that needs to be changed because of the change in the form of government, because we already went through all this verbiage in this chart.
well, I think one of the challenges is that we were charged with reviewing the current charter and what was proposed in 2019. So that's part of our job. And that secondly, there were some changes made to the charter to effect an elected mayor. And one of the things that we're struggling with as a city right now is that those changes were necessarily limited because of the one issue per ballot rule. So there are things in the charter that do need to be updated in order to reflect the elected mayor.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It'd be nice if the facilitator were instructed to do that.
I don't know that we can lay that off on the facilitator. We don't have a big enough budget, for one thing.
Yeah, I think once we get all our notes together, the things that we approved and disapproved in the 2019 version, and we get the legal questions answered, we'll be able to move much more quickly because we've done a lot of the groundwork. We'll be able to say, okay, that's what we wanted, and we'll do it, plug that in now, and we'll get the legal questions answered. I mean, that's a lot of ifs about, getting stuff done, but I don't think we'll need to spend nearly as much time. We know where the problems are, and we'll be able to focus on them. But again, once we get all our files together so that we can recover the changes we proposed to the 2019 revision and then get the questions that emerged answered, I think we'll be able to move on this if we possibly, well, anyhow, yeah.
I agree with you, and I think that you'll see as you go through this that there are some things in the charter that, some selected things that were changed while other things weren't. So for instance, the qualifications for city council don't match what they are for the mayor. Maybe they should be the same. Some of the provisions on how you fill vacancies have different time periods. Should they be different? Should they be the same? So there's some concrete things to look at, and I think it will go much faster just because we've already gone through the whole thing once, and because in doing that, we have partially looked at the current charter, but we haven't necessarily zeroed in on some of these things. So let's just review action items that we've identified for our homework, so to speak.
Mostly for Graham and Lee, but I think Guy.
And Linda.
So
I'm going to call the community center, so.
That's right.
I get one.
Oh,
too.
sorry, Jonathan. Yeah.
I'm going to send out
Good luck.
another doodle for our second February meeting. I'm going to prepare a save the date notice that will go in the city newsletter. Craig is going to check on publication deadlines for Future Heights. And Jonathan is going to check the community center on what kind of bulletin they announce, what kind of calendar they announce. I will ask that the public meeting be announced at a city council meeting so that the word starts to get out there for that. We've identified some things that Lee is going to check on. Under Article 1, he was going to check on whether we need edits due to the Ohio Supreme Court case. Graham is going to pull out his list of places where we had questions for the law director or the facilitator, so we could try to get answers on some of those. And I think for a lot of those questions, I think Lee can probably answer those so that we don't have to incur out-of-pocket expenses for the facilitator. But let's look at the list and see what Lee thinks in terms of what he can handle. Lee, would you try to find the annotated version of the 2019 charter so we can start with that next time on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And,
Minutes to say specifically are changes to the 2019.
yeah, the one that's annotated.
Yes.
Because between you and Jonathan, I assume somebody has that.
So I was using Lee's copy.
Yeah, I should have it.
I feel like it might be on the computer in the other conference room. Like,
No, it should be on the, either on my computer or on that jump drive. I'll find it.
Yeah, we'll find it. We'll find it. I think there just was a misunderstanding about what we wanted to use for tonight. So we did pretty well without it, but next time we'll have it, and I'm sure we'll go faster.
two more action items I had noted was Lee would inquire about social media post for the public comment meeting, and that we're looking at legal advice for the land acknowledgement as well.
And I'm assuming that, Lee, you're going to modify Dropbox? All right, so that we have the additional folders that we agreed on here.
And editing privileges.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
And editing privileges.
Yeah, and editing, access to editing privileges, yes. Also, the ability to upload or download, upload a file.
I think that should be included in the
That's
editing.
part of it. And then if you could kindly send a link to that Dropbox again to all the members of the commission, just in case somebody can't find it.
Yes.
Let me suggest that you send all the Dropbox information in one email that's labeled Dropbox.
Yeah, and then this is annotated file that we're talking about that nobody can see, that we're having trouble finding. That would be a nice thing to put up on the Dropbox, huh?
Yeah,
I think.
in the work in progress file. Anybody have anything else?
So Linda, you're going to keep plugging in survey respondents to these dates and times, correct? For the
Yes.
Monday, the 8th and
Yes,
Tuesday, the 9th?
I will nail down specific people for specific days, and I will also circulate the surveys that we've received, and we'll circulate other ones as they come in.
All right, and I was going to suggest, since we can all make it on the 8th, if you could push those people to the 8th first, so that, as I think you said Gail and Tony have responded. So if you could set them up for the 8th and any.
Well, 5 people have responded, and
Oh, you got
Gail was
surveys.
available on the 8th, and everybody else, 3 of the others were available on the 8th and the 9th for multiple slots. So I think we're going to end up doing some on the 8th and some on the 9th, so we'll skew towards doing more on the 8th
Right.
to accommodate Harriet, because she's going to be out of town on the 9th.
Harriet will be out of town for both days, I believe.
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
so do you have a preference?
Jonathan will be.
Jonathan's only missing the 9th, right?
Yeah, no preference.
So
Okay.
the 8th, since you're.
Yeah, I mean, you just have one more person.
And Linda, you said you would forward the responses to the survey to me?
Yeah.
Can I also, I mean, it might sound funny, but, as you encourage the council members or the elected officials to respond, you could tell them that, there's someone really eager to give attention to those responses. Just waiting, all right?
Well, I followed up with them today just to let them know that some people had responded and some people had sent in surveys to try to, let them know that we are moving along on this and that we do look forward to receiving all of their comments. So
We
I think
did-
there may be some individual follow-up needed to encourage people to
Well,
send those in.
I actually just had a phone conversation with Davita Russell, and she said she's on vacation until tomorrow and hasn't looked at anything, so she's going to look at everything tomorrow.
Yeah.
So she's probably one of the people that hasn't responded, just since you said she had,
This was over the holidays for sure.
yeah,
so.
yeah.
But they all got invested yesterday, so they're legit.
Right. Well, she's not working until tomorrow on Cleveland Heights matters, he announced.
Okay. All right. Anything else anybody has to add? Anybody have anything for our lessons learned category? I think we had a good discussion tonight. We really got a lot done.
I wanted to say that I certainly hope that we don't exclude the full examination of both the hybrid form of government and ranked choice voting. I'm very concerned that we not just clean up language in in the charter, which has already been done by the 2019 people, although albeit not adopted. I'm very concerned that we seriously consider and take it upon ourselves to consider at least the hybrid form of government and also ranked choice voting. So that's my comment about tonight's discussion.
Thank you, Harriet.
My only comment would be that we could consider as many issues as people want to consider. But if we're going to finish by the end of May, it means we're going to have more time spent on getting things done. And that's fine. We can do that. I'm fine for doing that, but that's what it's going to require.
I didn't say as many things. I just said those two things, which we have been talking about from the very beginning.
Yeah, no, I'm not objecting to what you're saying. I'm just saying that we have to, one of the reasons for looking at the work plan was to try to map out what do we need to tackle when if we want to finish in time for the end of May. Because putting together, the final document with the changes and a report explaining why we're proposing what we're proposing is going to take some time. So we can't just leave that to the last 2 weeks and think we can cram it through in that time. Okay. Anything else anybody has?
I thought it was interesting to sit up here in these council chairs. It was kind of hard to see, like Guy and Craig over there. So I don't know. I wonder if that has any impact. Maybe we should include in the charter a rounded council table.
For real.
So the council
real.
people can look at each other during the
You're here. You're here.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
It's hard to hate people up close.
Yeah, no wonder they don't get along.
Yeah, well, the reason I
line.
decided to sit here was because I like to see everybody, because then I know when you're raising your hand or if you look quizzical, and I can't do that if I'm sitting over there.
All you needed was an apple up there on the desk.
Okay, folks, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned, thank you.
Off to a good start of the new year.